All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webcast. We'll be talking about driving business outcomes with the power of extended reality. Um, and I'm Gina Joseph. I'm the marketing director here at In Context. And our presenter, Deanna Sheehan, is a principal consultant for In Context. And she'll be talking today about how businesses can leverage extended reality experiences to drive incremental value. So if you've been curious about how to get started using virtual and augmented reality, mixed reality applications, you've come to the right place. Um, Before we start, you're welcome to ask questions in the chat box. We can answer those as we go, or we can come back at the end. And if you have additional questions, you can also ask those at the end, or feel free to reach out to us later. And you will also be receiving a recording of today's presentation as well. With that, Deanna, I'll let you get started.
Thank you so much, Gina. I want to apologize to everybody. We have a bit of weather and haze here in the Chicago area, so I am sounding a little stuffy, but I think you should be able to understand me. We have enabled closed caption for this webinar with the goal of making this as accessible to anyone joining the webinar, but also we are recording this. And so we want to make sure that for those who listen to the recording, they are able to hear and understand everything that we talk about. So with that said, we are going to jump right in. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually start and tackle this from more of a foundational perspective. We're going to talk about the state of the metaverse today, what it really means, because there is a lot of confusion at times out there from a broader sense of what is the difference between metaverse and extended reality? How are they connected and how are they different? And then we're really going to kind of go through this journey of how people are using extended reality and metaverse experiences today and where we think that that's going to go next. So one of the first things that we're going to talk about is this idea of, is the metaverse dead? We know 2022 was the year of kind of the metaverse. It was the hot topic in technology circles. And it all really started with Mark Zuckerberg renaming Facebook Meta. Now, we know that that didn't really go the way that Zuckerberg planned, but it really started the hype cycle of the idea of the metaverse conceptually and what that could be. And in fact, one of the most interesting things is really, if you look back at the history in kind of the industrial and business conversations, metaverse has been around for a while, but we really didn't start to see thought leadership. We didn't really start to see kind of comprehensive thinking around it in a way that was very viable in public until late 21 and early 2022. What I will tell you today is the metaverse is absolutely not dead. Where we are right now is actually a very normal step in technology evolution for things that are going to actually sustain for a very long time. Where we are, and this is actually Forrester's model of technology hype. This is actually something that happens over and over again. And if you think back and you look at different things, right now, AI is one of them. Extended reality, virtual reality have had their moments on this hype cycle. But within this is the concept of a hype cycle. And it's the idea that there is a specific moment that is publicly recognized as the trigger in which the media jumps in and businesses and all kinds of organizations really enter into the dialogue about a technological development. And sometimes it's not just a technological development. This could actually very much apply to a lot of the key trends and fads that pop up in consumer packaged goods and new product development and things like that as well. But we are right now in our metaverse conversation in what often is called the trough of disillusionment. And what that means is right now, what we are in is we are in the place where the media has backed away from metaverse conversations. And kind of the average person within the industry or even consumers is like, that's over. But because metaverse technology is actually something that is very viable, that exists today and has true applications for business, the technology and the companies within the technology space that play in metaverses are continuing to develop and evolve. And the fact of the matter is, when we hit our peak for metaverse experiences, when they are going to actually become an adopted form of everyday use cases, both for business decisions and making business decisions, but also kind of within the consumer space at home, that's still coming. It's just a few years out. And it's really going to be driven by how people connect to the metaverse, how metaverse ecosystems start to connect to each other, that move to a place in which it becomes much more scalable and much more easily accessible. So what I will say outright is the metaverse, the concept of the metaverse, while the way that it has been initially presented to us in 2022 may not be how it kind of evolves and reaches full scalability, the metaverse concept itself is absolutely not dead. And in fact, is thriving and growing day in and day out in a number of industrial use cases. So what does this actually mean? As we talk about metaverse, as we talk about extended reality, I want to distinguish between them. Extended reality or mixed reality, which is something that has been heard and spoken about a lot in the last few weeks since Apple announced the release of the Vision Pro in 2024. In essence, this is a term that captures all types of kind of 3D immersive experiences, either within a virtual setting or in real life. And so when you hear the idea of extended reality or mixed reality, a lot of times it's referring to things like augmented reality, which is, we'll talk about how that's used today, virtual reality, and mixed reality, which in essence is some form of the combination of the two. In essence, there is an element that is held within this that is 3D. 3D is the overlying factor, a 3D replication of something that exists in real life or could exist in real life that is then brought into an immersive experience in one way or another. Metaverses are actually, in essence, a virtual environment that has immersive, kind of the ability to be immersive, that is integrating in 3D experiences. It's not flat, but in essence, these become ecosystems. These become places in which multiple people can interact, and ultimately in which they become, to a degree, a virtual world that can be experienced in a unique way. When people talk about the metaverse, for any sci-fi fans, there is a movie that was released based on a book that's a couple decades old called Ready Player One, right? And conceptually, when we first started hearing Mark Zuckerberg and others talk about metaverse, it was this idea of people are going to live in the metaverse and they're going to buy in the metaverse, and people are going to stop talking to each other because they're going to put on their headsets, and the real world will disappear, and that's what it's going to be. That's not what metaverses are. And in fact, some incredibly successful metaverses today are actually set up within gaming platforms, and we'll talk more about what those are. But they're things that, trust me, more than 50% of people have, 50% of households have people playing in metaverses today, at least from a gaming and entertainment space. So how does this all connect, right? So in essence, as you think about virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality, these tend to be independent. You have a virtual reality experience that could or could not include a headset. And in fact, right now, the bulk of virtual experiences are actually experiences without a headset. Augmented reality is generally something that's using your phone or tablet to take a 3D representation of something and make it work in your home. But again, it's in isolation. Mixed reality, again, a combination of the two, but in isolation. So they are independent experiences there is not the ability to really interact with other people in a clear way at a scalable level. It's not a community. It's not 100 or 2,000 people in a room. It is actually more, I have me playing, maybe there are a few other people involved, but it's more insular, right? And then it's somewhat immersive, but it's not like you are fully disappearing into kind of the experience. And it's static. I think this is the one most important thing to understand about extended reality holistically is this is not something that is constantly changing because people are adding ideas and experiences to it. It can be collaborative, but the foundation of mixed reality and extended reality today is in essence, you create an experience, people experience that experience. If you want to change it, you have to go into the back end of the platform to change that experience and adopt it into something new. Now, that's going to evolve quickly with the integration of AI. It's going to become much more personalized. It's going to stop being static and start being more structured around as people evolve and interact, the experience changes. We're not there yet. That's what's coming. On the other side of things, metaverses, right now, they are independent. There will be a place where ecosystems start to connect to each other, where you're going to have interoperability between them as you think of assets like NFTs, or even just as you think of some of the different things that happen, kind of you'll be able to get to a point where certain companies are going to realize it's better to connect and collaborate to create bigger ecosystems with more global scale. That is coming. It's not really there yet. It is designed intentionally to, in essence, and multiplayer isn't the right word, but it is designed today for multiple people to experience and connect together at the same time. They can talk, they can interact with each other through their virtual digital twins, but it is connected. That is the key piece of difference between the extended reality that we have today from a technological perspective and metaverses. And the other element of this is generally it is not static. Extended reality experiences are generally designed and created by a specific agency or a company. Metaverses are actually have been designed, particularly in the gaming space, to allow anyone to be able to build and create within them. And they want that because that actually helps to contribute to this idea of collaborating and connecting together in this ecosystem. But at the core, everything is founded on a 3D asset. And the reason that is important is because 3D assets and digital twins are actually going to be one of the key technological drivers of scalability. It used to be that creating a 3D asset was incredibly complicated. You had to take multiple pictures of a product or a store or a house. And then you had to use special software, or you had to use artists to create a 3D replica of that thing for a virtual experience or for the metaverse. AI has actually created paths in which creating 3D objects is actually something you can do as an individual on your phone. There are dozens of apps where people can actually make anything 3D on their phone. At this point, you have AI allowing to make your own photos on your iPhone, a 3D photo. So as the ability to make 3D content, and as the ability to make 3D content quickly and cheaply continues to evolve and grow, it will then help to facilitate the evolution of both extended reality experiences and metaverse experiences. So I want to start with this idea of extended reality, right? Because that is really where the bulk of us live today and how we are engaging with this concept. And extended reality, as you look here, these are just a couple of examples of how organizations have used extended reality in our day-to-day lives. This is the consumer frame of things. But as you think about it, honestly, some of the simple things like Snapchat filters are the most basic use of extended reality, in which you can see here, basically having 3D dog nose and ears added to your picture is a fun way to engage in Snapchat to be silly. Movies for years have been using 3D visualization tools to make their films much more immersive. And that can be done in a way that isn't technically an animation, Avatar with James Cameron, when he first launched that, that was all really founded in kind of using virtual reality to change and create an immersive world. But again, it was static. It wasn't connected. You couldn't engage in it. It was something that was ultimately being created for filming and provide an experience to you. It felt immersive. It felt different, but it was in isolation. We've seen it really take off in animation. And this is actually one of my favorite illustrations, the movie Coco. And Pixar and a lot of other animation companies do a really good job using 3D to really bring their ideas to life, even though they're animated. With this scene from Coco, as he's walking into the land of the dead, it's one of the most beautiful, visually appealing animations that I have seen in a very long time. And everything was created in virtual reality to feel as if it was 3D. Fortnite and Roblox. I want to call these out because these are the single largest metaverses that exist today, anyone, anywhere in the world. And I think it's really important to understand as we talk about metaverses, the reason metaverses aren't dead is because they are already established and they are incredibly successful, and their popularity is only growing from a consumer lens, but the same thing is happening behind the scenes from a commercial lens in a customized way. And the last example is something that candidly, I will admit, has become incredibly popular around me. It's this idea of virtual sports. And we see from a consumer lens, people going and doing virtual golfing as a way to play golf when weather isn't as good as it could be, or to train or to practice and get better at real golf. But you're also starting to see things like virtual golf leagues, professional leagues take off. And you're seeing people like Serena Williams and her husband investing in virtual golf, in essence, tours for professional players. As we've talked about the 3 pillars of extended reality, I've kind of given you a few examples. So now I want to dig a little bit more. Again, our virtual reality example here has headsets, but again, the bulk of consumers do not engage with virtual reality utilizing headsets. They do it via their tablets, their laptops, their mobile phones. So as we talk about all of the extended reality elements, this is the piece about the digital twin. When you do digital twins well, you truly can simulate or replicate almost anything that you can imagine in real life. What you've got here is you actually have an example of a physical image of a store and the digital twin 3D replication of that in our virtual reality platform. And what's interesting is we have clients when they are creating these digital twins that are using this to visualize things like in-store marketing, to test ideas of store layout changes, of where new products should fit and things like that. But again, the digital twin is important because what it does is it allows you to really understand implications in the physical world, but in a digital space in which you're mitigating risk of making changes without any kind of, you're mitigating the risk of making a change that might be bad for the physical space in the real world. You can also see here that as you start to move into 3D objects, they really start to create and change how people engage and interact. You can see that using 3D objects in like e-commerce platforms and things like that really make it better able to understand what products you're buying, how you're engaging with different things, what the set of the space might look like for the consumer or for an employee sitting at their home. So one of the questions is, how do people use virtual reality today? And from a industry perspective at a larger level, we see a lot of companies, both manufacturers and retailers, using virtual reality to test ideas. This top example is in essence a shelf layout test in which a manufacturer might make sure that the planogram for a category in the physical store is tested virtually before investing in changing an entire category for a retailer to make sure that planogram change is going to drive incremental growth. To change the planogram of categories and implement that at a retail outlet can cost millions of dollars. If it actually decreases category performance, that actually becomes a significant impact on business results. And so allowing retailers and manufacturers to test these ideas, doing virtual shopping exercises, changes the dynamic of how things work. You can do the same thing with store design, with new store concepts, all of that. Another example here you see a lot of industries using virtual reality as a way to train their employees. It makes a heck of a lot more sense to have a pilot learn how to do a tough landing in a virtual simulator than to do it in real life. It's obviously there's money saved, there are lives saved. And we see companies more and more looking at virtual reality as a way to test everything from customer service experiences to supply chain to, honestly, I worked with a client where we were talking about, actually, we created a virtual simulation of a bakery that was a scalable bakery in which people had to go through a virtual training of where to find all the things they need for baking in a back-end bakery to make sure they were the most efficient as they could possibly be. You've also seen, particularly as the pandemic hit, you saw museums and other entertainment spaces look at virtual reality as a way to bring ideas to life, to bring concepts to life, and to improve a consumer's experience and kind of engaging in everything from going to a museum, being a real T-Rex, to education. With the augmented reality, we really saw augmented reality become an everyday part of what people do with Pokemon Go, which was launched obviously a number of years ago. And yes, it tended to target a specific audience, but it also started to make this idea of augmented reality a little bit more mainstream. Now, at this point, we've progressed to the point in which any retailer and even some manufacturers that are selling direct to consumer have implemented augmented reality apps for people to use on their phone to make sure things like furniture fit where you want them to fit, to make sure that the paint color you're going to put on the wall, rather than buying dozens of swatches, you can actually play with the augmented reality to see what those colors might look like if you want to change up the paint in your house or any other location. We also have seen augmented reality used by apparel retailers, used by Sephora and Ulta and beauty brands to actually play around with what different things look on people's bodies and see if those are things that fit for them. And now what we're starting to see within the larger commercial space is, particularly for in-store execution, we are starting to see companies use customized augmented reality apps to actually be able to make sure that things like in-store signage or displays or store layout designs are going to fit in the right way that they want it to in the space that's available. Lastly, and as I talk about mixed reality, it's like the integration of everything we've just talked about, but for very intentional uses. Right now, some of the coolest stuff with mixed reality is coming from new store design. It's coming from actually repairs and engineering, and it's coming from medical training. One of the biggest things that have come, one of the kind of largest stories about mixed reality is when Case Western, when their medical school looked to mixed reality as a way to train doctors or soon to be doctors, particularly specialists like surgeons, to train them on how to do surgery, how to do these complex medical processes, starting with a virtual simulation of what they had to do. What you see here is an example, in essence, of what medical students, and this has actually moved just from Case Western to a number of different medical, and it's become an industry standard where doctors will literally do, in essence, test on virtual simulations to make sure as they are qualifying for what they're doing, that they're testing things in the right way. And those scenarios are actually designed both for simple, but also for complex things when problems might arise, how you handle for that. What does how does it react to what you're doing? And this is something that we see within the manufacturing space. Here you've got an example from auto manufacturing, and it's just continuing to grow and evolve. This is actually a way where you you can improve the efficiency of training, you can improve the retention of training experiences, all in doing it in a way that is safe and effective. So I kind of talked through these examples. This is a bit of a repeat, but ultimately what we are seeing in the 10 years that we have been playing in the virtual reality space, we've seen companies use extended reality to help in planning and really kind of structuring for those that are retailers, how they want their physical retail space to look, for manufacturers, using virtual reality to lay out and build optimized manufacturing plants, optimized distribution hubs, and things like that. We've also then seen them take ideas working with potentially agencies or of different types to kind of model out if everything is going to work the way that it should work, to basically create 3D representations of sketches for a new store design, and then understand if things are going to work the way they should, and actually test those ideas with consumers. And this is where that risk mitigation comes in. To build out a new store that's under 5,000 square feet still costs $200,000, and you have to buy the property or the rent. So if you're going to invest in building a store, you want to make sure as a retailer that that store is appealing to the consumers that you want to target. Being able to test that and allow consumers to virtually walk through that store, see where they gravitate, see what they're looking at, see what they want to buy within the store, make sure it allows those retailers to, in essence, understand pre-launch what's working and what's not, and actually make changes to that store implementation based on those results. Training is an example that I just kind of provided a number of different use cases. What we are also starting to see, and we'll look at this in a few minutes, is smart brands are starting to use virtual reality as a way to build unique brand experiences that drive awareness of people of their brands, but also that in essence create opportunities to commercialize their products directly to consumers in new ways. And this is where we at In Context believe they are just starting to scratch the surface in what could be, and where things are going. So now, as we talk about digital twins and kind of planning and research, this video really kind of walks you through a really quick example of what that can look at. For any of you on the phone, I'm fairly confident you can guess what store this is the digital twin on. This actually kind of gives you an example of how we do virtual shopping experiences with consumers. Sometimes these are done for research purposes. Actually, for the most part, these have been done for research purposes. But this is where we see the future going, is we see e-commerce sites starting to use this type of virtual shopping experience as a way to drive incremental sales for e-commerce platforms as well. So as we kind of go to looking at some of the next things, you can see here, this is a real life training. I showed you some pictures before. This is someone who actually, this is a training that was created for a field store associates to actually go into the store and see different things that they would need to look for when they do a store walk for a weekly store walk for their brands. And it was set up in a way in which the trainer could observe the virtual walkthrough that the training was doing, and then could actually be educated along the way of the things that they needed to do and not do. And it allowed people to actually do this all in a group in one place without having to disrupt shoppers in the physical store. It also made it a point for the training and development team to do all of this in an internal location, in a local location, versus having to go out with these field sales teams dispersed across the country and do these walkthroughs with 20 different locations with 20 different people one at a time. So it saved time, it saved money, and it created more effective trainings. And one of the interesting things when we talk about virtual commerce is we did some proprietary research, in part because we very much believe that this virtual shopping application is going to be one of the things that drives e-commerce growth over the next 3 to 5 years, and also feeds into meta commerce when we hit the point of scalable adoption. What's very, very interesting is this is something that millennial shoppers today are very interested in. No one likes to shop. Shopping online is incredibly cumbersome when you're shopping an item-based approach to what you're doing, but being able to create a customized virtual shopping experience. So let's say you were shopping for a 4th of July barbecue, rather than having to go and look for the meat or the protein that you want, look for the sides that you want, the dessert that you want. If you were able to click a banner ad and pop into your 4th of July store, in which you had all of the different categories of interest represented, including alcohol, including desserts, all of the ingredients, the paper plates and cups, all of that in one place that you could shop in 2 or 3 minutes. The time saved and the ability to make sure you're walking out with everything you need in one place in an e-commerce experience that is virtually shopped changes the dynamics of how people shop. And we already see this executed, right? So there are a couple companies out there that are working with brands to create these immersive brand experiences that are tangentially related to commerce, but more about building brands. And so these 2 examples, one is for Corona Premier. It was launched during the PGA Tour events. And in essence, what it did is it gave you both an introduction to Corona Premier, but also the opportunity, if you wanted it, to buy Corona Premier and have it delivered to your house through some of the delivery agencies. In addition, and this is one of those places where you extend the reach of your kind of commerce. Obviously, we're talking about a beer brand, but what you could buy through this virtual experience was all of the kind of branded swag you see here. You could buy every shirt in this clothing store. You could buy golf club covers tied to the PGA Tour, branded by Corona Premier, in this virtual setting that literally was directly connected to the landing page for the PGA Tour that Corona Premier sponsored. Lindt launched a virtual commerce store right around the holidays, and there were elements of, in essence, explaining to you how Lindt has created its chocolates for decades, talk you through some of the ingredients and the sustainable or the responsible ways in which they're sourcing chocolate and things like that, but then also allowed you to buy product to be shipped to you that you could then eat yourself or give away for gifts. And so it's like, this is something we're already seeing. People are already getting comfortable with it. And what we're really envisioning happening, and this is just a rough example, is a similar experience, but a little more interactive. So we'll kind of let you see here. We actually tested this idea with shoppers in the last few years. We've tested it multiple times to kind of see where they were and if the trend was growing in their interest. And you can see here what it looks like. And with this view that you see here, this was a very simple store. This is something that was not done with an agency, really just tied into what you would normally see in a store. We wanted it to look like it did in a store. But these types of environments are designed in a way in which you could actually have multiple people shopping together. You could integrate in, for a retailer and manufacturer, retail media, kind of those retail media platforms, things like having videos in the background, ads promoting different things, connections to recipes or things that may be relevant if you hit different products. You can see here, you could even add in details and things like that about the products. Anything here could kind of be added with brand experiences to change the dynamic and how people shop. And so what we ultimately found as you presented that idea, and we looked across different representations of it. Here you've got agency driven. One is a more branded store that looks like a store. The other literally was a farmyard. You can shop for your breakfast items in the farmyard where you get the fresh juice and the fresh eggs and the fresh bacon, maybe not intentionally. But it allowed people to play around with this idea of a virtual experience that's just not going to exist in real life. And ultimately, we found that consumers really, really enjoyed it. We found that they believed that they spent more time browsing the aisles. They actually felt they did it more online, at 40% of shoppers saying they browse more. They also felt they browsed more in that experience than they would in store. And I think a lot of that is driven by the fact that they don't have to cover the same the geography of the store, going from one side to the other to get all of the things that they needed. They said that the bulk of them said they liked the idea of shopping virtually in addition to shopping how they're used to, in part because e-commerce platforms have been designed to allow you to grab things very quickly that you generally buy or often buy. So it allows that opportunity to create more incremental opportunities to drive interaction and engagement with shoppers. They wouldn't do it all the time though, right? They'd do it for certain categories. They might do it if there was a deal or if they were looking for specific experiences or special occasions. And I think the biggest thing to understand with all of this is when they are shopping this way, they're not using headsets. This is being done today on laptops and PCs. It will continue to be done on laptops and PCs. And then we're seeing a movement into mobile phone and tablet as millennials kind of increase in shopper size and younger generations move up as well. So closing off quickly, we've got just a few minutes. Let's talk about metaverses. Metaverses today, they're being used both for consumer engagement and corporate engagement. And people are engaging them similarly to virtual experiences, with the bulk of people kind of connecting through laptops and PCs, mobile phones. What's important here to understand is gaming systems are a way to engage with metaverses as they exist today. And that is a unique channel to reach audiences for brands that companies are just starting to capitalize on. Consumers outright say that they're using this for gaming, they're using it for entertainment. They're not really starting to think about those deeper things, the commercial side of things, but it's coming. And I think this is the part that's really, really, really important is you break down millennial shoppers, millennial consumers, in which tens of thousands of people around the world are engaging with some of these metaverse experiences every week, or hundreds of thousands of people are engaging with these experiences every month. Penetration is incredibly significant among younger shoppers. And this is part of why this idea of metaverse experiences isn't dead. It's something that has already been embraced. It's something that millennial shoppers, Gen Z shoppers are comfortable with. Consumers that are even kind of looking at those that are under 18, even more comfortable with. That's going to be a way that people want to interact in the future that maybe didn't exist in the past. Right now, when we talk about metaverses, we're seeing that 49% of US consumers, 49% of US households say that somebody engages in the metaverse in some form or fashion, particularly working around Fortnite and Roblox. And I misspoke there, I'm sorry. 49% of US consumers say someone in their household is engaging with Fortnite and Roblox. So think about the amount of people engaging in these. There are customized, focused, independent metaverses, Decentraland, Sandbox. They don't have the traction, they don't have the scale, but they are successful and they are places to explore ideas of what works and doesn't work. This is an example of a great, this is an example of a Chipotle brand experience that actually was built out to drive awareness about Chipotle, but also was set up with the goal of driving traffic to Chipotle stores. It was incredibly successful. It's about 2 years old. This is another example in real life of how retailers are capitalizing on metaverses and finding ways to drive brand awareness, brand interest, and then, if successful, drive sales at the store. This is a Forever 21 example. The retailer launched a virtual beanie in the Roblox experience. They launched it. It was so successful, along with a number of other virtual apparel items within the Roblox environment. They actually decided to do a limited run of those virtual items physically made in the store. And ultimately, the beanie is one of them that actually sold out when they ran this. It was done, I believe, last year. But it's what you're seeing right now is brands really toy around with, how do I use this? Is it an advertising play? Is it a commercial play? Is it both? It's a bit of both. And I think we're just starting to scratch the surface in how people are going to use it. There are agencies that have been designed and actually have started to specialize in help in supporting both Roblox and Fortnite in kind of optimizing their commercial value for brands in working with them. And I think what's interesting is you're going to see companies adopt it that you wouldn't expect. In fact, one of the very large PR plays was done by the NBA for their All-Star weekend.
Mr. Clean, lemon fresh, I'm a fiend, stretching out the limousine, hit a 3 off the screen, yeah, I'm dripping, I'm a treasure, yeah, I'm better, slow it down.
So that example was quick, and I wanted to show it in part because we're not talking about a manufacturer, we're not talking about a retailer. They were selling things like the virtual, oh my goodness, uniforms, the jerseys and things like that for the avatars in Roblox. But again, it wasn't about making money. It was about driving brand awareness, driving interest in watching the NBA All-Star game, and in essence, building a connection to the consumers with the goal that is building relationship that will last over time. We've got similar metaverses that are completely commercial. When you, with IBM, with Apple, with NVIDIA, they are actually building metaverses that are customized to individual companies. And then within that, allowing experiences that are customized to those companies. We hear some of those shared out as successful use cases, but they are being used, as we think about those things that extended reality are being used for all the same reasons. They're being used for planning and visualization. They're being used for training and testing. And what we're ultimately going to find, and I think this is, as we think about the future, the key piece to take away is we have seen a successful adoption and implementation of metaverse experiences from the consumer lens with the gaming platforms and Fortnite and Roblox and other brand games like that. We are seeing the same thing happen on the commercial side. Where we're going to hit scale is when these the different commercial companies start to find a way to connect the dots. They won't always do it, but they will reach a critical point in which there is interoperability between certain factions of this, in which you can actually connect the dots between commercial and consumer, that will drive scale and will drive revenue. I think the Vision Pro for Apple is actually going to be the first step in driving that scalability. With the current price point that they have announced, it will start in the commercial space. And then as the technology evolves and the price of those glasses become more reasonable to buy from a household perspective, you'll start to see them kind of basically bridge the gap between consumer and commercial. I would actually argue that Apple is probably going to be the most likely to be able to connect the dots between the two versus some of the other players out there. So to end this all, look, the metaverse is not dead. I'm hoping you walked away, if you didn't already have one, with an idea of some of the foundational elements, but also how the idea of extended reality is different than metaverse experiences, but why they are connected. And in essence, we very much believe that the building blocks of extended reality, the 3D digital assets, the reasons people use it are fundamentally going to lead into the fundamentals of metaverse experiences because they really are connected. They are similar. And it's really more about building your strategies as companies to understand where you fit, how you want to play today in this space, how you may want to play in the next year to two as things evolve, and then where you want to be well positioned to be as you're starting to plan for 3 to 5 years out when we start to hit scalable models. And so really what we would propose to you is to make sure as you think internally, as you're working with your clients, that you're helping them think through their current XR and metaverse strategies. Do you have the right digital assets? Is the content library that you have set up? And then how can you use that content? So if you do have 3D assets, how do you use those 3D assets to support your retail partners if you're selling things online? How do you use those for training and internal purposes to drive ROI? And then ultimately, if you're really just getting started, how do you build a path to build the transformation roadmap that you need to be successful with extended reality and metaverse experiences in the future? And if you need help with that, we are happy to help you. So with that, I will thank you for your time. And if there are any questions, let me know.
Does anyone, excuse me, have any questions before we end this today? A minute. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Deanna. Hopefully this gives everyone a good foundation for how companies are already using XR and how you can make it work for you and your organization. So again, you will be receiving a recording of today's presentation, as well as Deanna's contact information. If you're interested in continuing the conversation with her to learn more. Thanks so much. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.